Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Parkinson, and I'm a Senior Indigenous Consultation Specialist with Atkins Realis. Today, we are continuing our series of live stream and radio topics on the Northern Road Link project as it moves through the provincial environmental assessment and federal impact assessment processes. The topics we are covering parallel our project activities, so we hope these will help our viewers and listeners better understand the project and provide input along the way. With me today is my usual co-host, Jennifer Ashawazake Pereira, my colleague and an Indigenous engagement and traditional knowledge specialist at Atkins Realis. Jennifer is a member of Henvey Inlet First Nation, located on the French River, south of Sudbury, and works with me on our projects across Canada. Hello, Jen. How are you today?
Ani, I'm good. How about you, Don?
Good, good. Yeah, it's been a busy few weeks for us. We've been off the air, as they say,
Off the
I
air and
guess,
on the road?
and on the road, on the road. Yes. So it's been fun meeting lots of people and
Mm-hmm.
getting around and chatting about the project. And but now we're back in our respective home offices, able
Back in the
to
saddle.
continue with our programming. Right?
That's it. So exciting.
Yeah, it is. And today we're going to continue on the show that we did a few weeks ago. I can't even remember which week it was, um, where we talk about community. We get community perspectives. So we
Mm-hmm.
interviewed, you and I interviewed with Tony McGuire, our uh, technical expert extraordinaire. Um, We interviewed a few community members, I believe 4 or 5, some from Martin Falls, some from Webequie, about a whole range of topics. Basically, had a conversation, and so this week we had the pleasure. We're going to play excerpts from the discussion that we had with Leslie Spence of
Mm-hmm.
Webequie First Nation. This was, I guess, just before Christmas last year, wasn't it? Early December, late November, something like that. And so we cover a wide range of topics in this. We'll be covering a wide range of topics, but they're all community-based topics, and we think it's going to be interesting. Jen's pulled some clips from those conversations, and so we're going to go through each of those clips and have a bit of a discussion. And if Tony's around, he can jump in as well too. And so I guess without further ado, Jen, maybe you can talk a little bit about our first clip before we play it.
Well, yeah, and before I jump into that, though, Don, just wanting to talk about some of the things that Leslie commented on, and those were some things like access, control and access, and then what issues that could bring, and his own personal experiences. And he talks about the benefits of a road with respect to healing, and he also addresses the high cost of food and how in community they've kind of I don't want to use the word mitigated because we say that far too much, but it's in my head because we work in the environmental assessment space. And yeah, and then being able to have more visitors. So with that first clip, um, and also he's incredibly thoughtful about the pros and cons of building a road. So that's really what this is about with those community perspectives. So here he talks about control and access, specifically related to drugs and alcohol that a road might bring. But then he talked about his own path to sobriety and how he did have access to booze when he lived on reserve. And then access was actually easier when he was in Thunder Bay, but he was able to prioritize his life. Yeah, and we can play that clip unless Tony wants to add something over there.
I was already drinking, but not as much as when I was in the res, and then
You see no
once
access to it.
yeah, like I had little access in the res, like drinking, and then I had more access moving in the
Yeah.
res with my, and then created more problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what made you go? You know what? This is because you healed yourself. Like so, you just what I want to do. I don't want to do this. So I'm just curious because this is like something we could think about when we think about roads. Like
For sure.
something we
Yeah.
could put in a report or something we can like. How did you? What was your steps for? Okay, we have access to booze. I was already drinking. This is how I got off booze or use booze in a healthy way. Like it doesn't matter if you're fully off it as long as you're using it responsibly and you're
Hmm.
waking up and doing all this stuff. So I'm just curious.
Well, for me, when I stopped drinking, I had to looked at my life, and then looked at my the what's in front of me, which was my niece at the
Yeah.
time. And I looked at her, and then I shouldn't be doing this, you know. And I shouldn't be doing that in front of her.
Yeah.
And it's gonna affect her in the future. So I might as well
Yeah.
try to stop drinking, or at least minimize my intake.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was sick for the whole week. And then I learned my lesson. I'm like, I don't feel this no more.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
Hopefully
after
you're
a week
drinking.
of drinking,
Hopefully
I
you're
was on a
drinking.
bender. I was on a
that's
week
not a
of
good
bender.
bender.
Yeah.
1 week later.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, no more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I had to like reflect,
Oh,
looking at her, like I need to like be better,
Yes.
be a better person
Yeah.
for her future.
So that was interesting. And these perspectives on the roads, I find, we've done a few interviews, they're deeply personal.
They really are, Jen, and the whole concept of road access and security, and the fear of increased drugs and alcohol amounts of drugs and alcohol coming in. It's a real fear, and I know working on road projects 10 years ago, we heard the same fears, and so it really points to the need for really thoughtful consideration of like road access to this road, and like controlling access to the road, providing like a level of security to try to ensure um, that there isn't this incredible amount increase in drugs and alcohol entering communities once they're ultimately connected to the highway system.
And
It's a
Leslie
real fear.
also, it is a fear. And Leslie also talked about building up the services and programs in community for prevention as
Yeah.
well as intervention, and quite possibly increasing some of the infrastructure, because he said, of course, there'd be jobs and that's important. And then, one of the other things, when going on a healing path, it's nicer too when you have easier access to health as well as to good food, right? And the costs of
Yeah,
food may come down with a road too.
yeah, very true. Yeah, both communities, have these concerns. Both communities have been pretty committed to making sure that there is controlled access to these roads for sure. And I think that's going to be those are some of the discussions that are going to occur as we move forward through this process at a higher level, right? Talking about who will own the road, who will administer the road, who will maintain the road, who will do the law enforcement associated with the road, right? All these things, um, they're all important topics. They're not directly part of an environmental assessment, but in a sense they are, right? Because it's about community safety as well too. That's a factor,
Hmm.
and those are concerns that they have when they look at the pros and cons of of an all-season road, that's something they have to be concerned about. And then the question is, how do you mitigate that, right? How do you limit or reduce that possible impact? So, fortunately, I think there are examples out there of situations where a road has connected communities with a highway network, a larger highway network, the outside world, if you want to call it that. And so there are experiences that can be drawn on from the past. So I think those can be always helpful and instructive too. So yeah, pretty important statements there from Leslie, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. And then jumping back to the part about healing, because as I said earlier, some of these experiences or thoughts or perspectives are deeply personal. And so
Yeah.
I think Leslie was also thinking about those healing services, but he had a really beautiful way of growing up. And that was sitting with elders and being in ceremony and stuff like that. And I think one of the other things, with some prosperity, a road could also prop up some of those kinds of activities, right? Sitting with elders and being able to provide bountifully for them, for lack of a better term. So if you want to play that next clip, Tony, that would be great.
Stuff in my community are very limited. It's unlimited.
Yeah.
We want our healing to be unlimited.
Yes.
To be able to access our healing through ceremonies like sweat lodge, or just to feel that connection.
Traditional healing,
Yeah,
right?
traditional healing.
As opposed to medical.
Yeah.
The medical side of things.
Because that's where I grew up, the traditional healing, traditional side. I grew up with ceremony.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my late grandpa was a sweat lodge carrier, and that's where I grew up. And that's where I found my identity, I guess, through that ceremony, and that's where I learned from the teachings too.
Okay.
Through ceremony too, and I got to sit with the elders too.
So I like that too, because I think with the road, Don, that would also provide access to people to come home and go
Yeah.
sit with those elders, like Leslie had the benefit of growing up with, right? So there'd be that opportunity, because it's always nice to go home. And right now, because of just winter roads or having to fly in there, those things are quite costly. And so I think people living in community have such privilege in that regard.
And Jen, that study I talked about earlier that we did 9-10 years ago, that was one of the top things. What you just said was one of the top things, top reasons for getting an all-season road. It wasn't, yeah, of course, I mean, connection to the highway, things like that. But one of the most popular reasons was being able to connect with family members, because of course family members are spread around the region, um, and so they hadn't seen certain family members in years because they couldn't afford to, right? It was too
That's
expensive.
right.
And so one of the top things was I can see my relatives more often, and go to their community events, right? And vice versa. And that was really, really interesting, because that was one of the big drivers in support of all season roads. Um, that particular
One of the
reason, just being
drivers, Don.
closer to family members. One of the drivers, yeah.
One of the
No pun
drivers.
intended. No pun intended, Jen. That was completely unintended.
Well, it was very good, Don.
Thank you. I tried my best.
We all do. Um, or sometimes, but going back to this part, one of the things I thought was really thoughtful, because you and Tony sat with Leslie for this, and so I was listening to the interview, and the part about food and how, and I think it was Tony that brought up the part how that has a lot to do with where we're at, comparing. I don't want to say comparing ourselves, but where we're at in relation to others in the country, whether we're behind on nutrition, because the a good breakfast is really important for kids to start their day. And Tony was bringing up these points about you can't really, um, well, he didn't say it like this, but be academically inclined if you're hungry, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
there's this part right here. But one of the things he also talked about in this next clip is, the high cost of food, but the way they share their food in community, I thought was a really nice way. And it's different for him being in Thunder Bay. And let's just roll that clip because there's some parts in there I'd like to talk about after.
Well, if you're if you're in the res, or my experience in the res, for me, I had to well, not for me, but the family would have a family cookout, and they would share their food, or they would bring their own food, like rice, or traditional food like moose meat, moose stew. We would have a little gathering there, and people in the neighbor would go to that little cookout and have something to eat.
Yeah.
So we would share. Okay? Versus being in a city, you have what, fast food restaurant here and there, like A&W and Taco Time, and you have access to a grocery store too. That has multiple, like Walmart, Metro,
Yeah.
and you go home and you no one to share it with.
Yeah.
So
Little plug
those
there,
are some
Jen, for
pros.
A&W and Taco Time. They should
Yeah,
be paying
in
for
Metro.
advertising.
In Metro. So, there's pros and cons right there. So on the one hand, there's, a lot more expensive food, and then you have to work to get some of your food, right? Like moose meat, caribou, and food like that. But then people like sharing it have that sense of community and that connection there, which is not necessarily the same as you do get in the city. So also, the other thing is having, I think, better access to food and resources. So with cheaper food in the community, there's cheaper. Maybe there's going to be cheaper gas and cheaper um, tools so that you can go out and harvest these things, right?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that Leslie was talking about there, and of course you've seen it in your community on a regular basis, right? And I know that the time I've spent in communities, I'm always blown away by just how sharing, how giving families are with their fellow community members,
Hmm.
sharing food, and it's just it's just in the fabric, right, of the community. It's just what they do, and we talk to community members all the time, and they talk about when they harvest, they provide food not only for their own families but for other families in need, other family members who are unable, maybe physically unable to go out and hunt and fish to gather, to harvest on their own. So that kind of thinking, and I think it's different. It's still different from like a small town, right? It's almost another level of communal living and sharing, I would say, based on what I've seen. It's really pretty admirable, to tell you the truth. That's my
Yeah, and
comment on it, Jen.
typically when you go see somebody too, they'll feed you, and it
Yes,
can
yeah,
be
yeah.
considered, in my neck of the woods anyway, impolite if you don't accept the food. And even I know this is kind of off topic, but going to the East Coast, it's exceptionally impolite to refuse food when you go to someone's house. And as a journalist, I remember I was in one of the Mi'kmaq communities doing a series of interviews throughout the day, and every household I went to, I ate at because they put food in front of me. And so I was told that, even if you're not going to eat the whole thing, have some at least, so you're not being impolite and turning away someone's food, because some people may not have a lot, but they're offering this to you, right? And it's a part of our sustenance, part of our life, and a part of our culture. So eat the food, Jen. So I was supposed to
Hmm.
meet my family at this person's house and eat this seafood stew that one of the families were making. And when I got to the house, I was so full. I was just busting full. And so I said, "Can I really please just take some of the stew to go, because I cannot eat one more bite of food today because I've been eating all day." So that's kind of how the way some things work, right? And then
Well, it's funny.
um
Oh, sorry, Jen. Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to that. Like from my experience as a consultant working in foreign countries, I did experience that, but it was more at certain times of year, right? So when I was in the Middle East during Ramadan, that's what people did, right? They shared. That's it's sort of the principle of it is to sharing with others, your neighbors. So in the neighborhood that I lived in, that's what people would do. They would go and provide food to their neighbors, and of course, you couldn't eat it till the sun went down. But um, that was what people did. But it was focused on a particular time of year, whether it's Ramadan or in other countries, other religions, it might be Easter or things like that. But in the communities that I've visited, it's like every day, right? That's just what people do. Like it's not just at certain times of year. That's just the way people just naturally think, right? And act.
Yeah, share food or break bread and have some talks and chats, and just makes things a little bit easier. So earlier we were saying that a road could also bring um, people closer together, if you will. So people that going to visit would make things easier, and other folks can come visit the community more often. And that's another part of the clip that we have that Leslie talks about people coming to visit.
I think I see more of people coming in for a gathering, like our powwow or our summer festival, to come celebrate with us.
Yeah,
It's more.
that's interesting. Right?
Yeah, it's more.
So it may actually. So, I mean, it's you're gonna have trouble with certain things, but there also is an enhancement. You'd be able to. Oh, people couldn't come to summer festival because softball.
Yeah,
softball $30,000, but the
Yeah.
airline tickets are 10,000 to enter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to fundraise. Now you just drive up.
Now you can just drive up and come celebrate with us and have fun.
So see, and you can just go visit for more than family events. And I hate to bring this up because I sound morbid, but lots of times when we see family members in my communities or extra people is during the harder times that communities are having. And so instead of just going for those hard times when communities going through crisis, it's nice to go there to have fun too and celebrate, right?
That's a great point. That's a really good point. I never even thought about it that way, but you're right. Yeah, it just and of course, allowing that to happen more often only builds more community spirit. It strengthens the language. It strengthens the culture, doesn't it? Like it only good things come from that, right? Because and then the communities that that we're talking about, a number of them stemmed from one or two other communities, right? And were formed, or broke off from an original community. So there are there are these incredibly strong ties between communities, and it, it's just really, as I said, when we did that study, I was shocked, but that was one of the key reasons. One of the key motivations for support for all season roads was being able to see family more often. It was pretty striking.
That's it. You can reinforce those kinship ties, right? And I know that's how
Yes.
Gord Wabos refers to that as kinship ties. So and they're pretty spread out, There's like this matrix in the region where all the families are pretty well connected. So Dawn, I want to go back to the food thing. And here's the clip I was talking about earlier, that there was the discussion that you guys had about thriving or lack thereof because of lack of access to nutritious food and 3 square meals a day. And, it's hard to learn when you're hungry. And I think that's how that part of it went. And so Leslie spoke a little bit about his experience with that when he was sitting with you guys. So if we can play that clip.
Now that I look back, like, because most of my childhood was trying to survive and trying to my family, like my grandparents, tried to feed me 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they tried, but most of our times waiting for child tax or welfare week, my I would eat two or one time a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So on that, I heard him mention child tax or welfare. I remember in the past when my kids were young, having to wait for child tax day to buy extra things for my family, and I can't even. And I have access to stores because there's a highway that goes into town, right? So and then having to really spend your money on um, more food than anything else because that's when you have the money is quite something. So and then the food connection, getting back to that, is also community connection, right? And so, we heard Leslie talk earlier about those family cookouts, bringing people together. And so that's not something that he necessarily sees in the city. And he doesn't have like a big family to share all this wonderful food with, but having that access and community is good. And then um, thinking that the kids will thrive, the youth will thrive, with having better access to things. And then people, the roads too, especially the construction part, will bring in more income. So we don't have to wait necessarily for child tax day to buy food or those extra things that our kids need, whether it be clothing or even just fun things.
Yeah, and we again in that study I did a few years ago. We looked at sort of the economic benefits, right, of having a road and impacts on prices, and it was really interesting to see. We didn't obviously get a super good idea about how much prices would drop, but as you can imagine, they drop pretty significantly because your transportation costs are going down substantially because it's coming in by truck instead of
Hmm.
by air, right? And that just adds so much more to the cost. So like you said, your dollar is going to go a lot further when those transportation costs go down. So yeah, that's just one of the benefits there. But yeah, the importance of being able to. I mean, all you're talking about here is just trying to get 3 meals a day, right? Healthy living. That's part of
Base,
healthy living.
basic. That's it. That's
Basic,
basic
basic
needs, and you can
human
move
needs,
beyond.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty disturbing that, it's not possible, right? Right now in 2025 in many places in in Canada and other countries as well. But that's definitely a benefit of the roads for sure. Definitely. Well,
Hmm.
that's a good conversation today, Jen.
Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to the interview. I listened to it a couple of times, and yeah, there's a lot in there. And like, at the beginning of all of this, I was saying that these perspectives are deeply personal because of people's experiences and how they grew up and how they live their lives
Yeah.
and how they go about just being in community and with family.
Well, and that's what makes them special, right? You get someone like Leslie who speaks from the heart, right? And talks about, things like how he found his identity, right? He one of the quotes that I in one of the clips which I really liked was how he found his identity through ceremony, right? By sitting with
Hmm.
others at ceremonies, and that's how he found his identity, which I think helped, from based on what he was saying, helped ground him, right, and focus him, so he could focus on bringing up his niece, which he is still doing um, today, and it's keeping him focused, right? So, yeah, Leslie's a
And
pretty
busy.
remarkable. Yeah, he's a busy guy, but he's a pretty remarkable person at the same time. So, yeah, that was good, Jen. That was really good, and so that wraps up today's discussion of community perspectives, as we like to call
Hmm.
it. We hope it was helpful. We hope it encourages you to join us again. Um, keep in touch with our project team members through the contact information available on our website, northernroadlink.ca. Miigwech, and make sure to look out for project updates on social media and our website.
All right, Bamapi.
Okay, there. Sorry, I was muted. Okay, guys, I just want to know, let you know, we're still recording. Um, Tony had to run off at the beginning of the show, so
Oh,
I don't know where he is or what's going on, and he has the ability to stop it. So I'm just letting you know. Um, I guess I'll see you guys at 2.
all right.
But good call,
Yeah,
guys. You did well.
yeah, Anders, can you
If I stop
tell
it, it'll
me?
stop. We can't chat to one another. That's why I'm not stopping it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Well,
chat to you quickly.
if you can get Tony to contact me,
As
please,
soon as I
that would
see
be
him.
helpful. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
See you all later.
Okay, I'll see you guys
See you
at 2.
later.
Take care.